On behalf of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society, I'd like to welcome you to the PBSCCS Podcast. I'm your host, Chris Messina. All right, everybody, I'm here with Jordan Sidwell, the Atlanta Braves organization. Jordan, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate your time. Tell the listeners about yourself, if you would, please.
Yeah, so right now working with our AA affiliate here, the Mississippi Braves. This is my second year with the Braves organization. Last year was in High A with our team in Orlando. Prior to that, worked a couple jobs in colleges and high schools. So, like I said, second year in pro ball for me and really enjoying it so far.
So if I have this correct, you worked at Maine at some point?
Yeah, I was at University of Maine for a semester.
How did you like living in Maine?
It was different. So I grew up in Iowa, lived in Chicago, South Dakota before that. So really had only lived in the Midwest. And then, that first full-time job happened to be up in about as far away from the Midwest as you can still be while being in the United States, up there in the corner in Orono, Maine. So it was different being up there in the Northeast. But, I think that's one of the cool things about this profession is that you kind of end up living some places that you never thought you'd be just because the job takes you there. So it was cool. It was different. I'm not a big seafood guy, so, never really had any lobster or anything up there, which I guess is kind of what they're known for. But, yeah, it was a great experience. And like I said, never know where you're going to end up here.
Yeah, I asked because I was up in Portland for 3 seasons, and personally I loved Maine. Being from Buffalo, I get all the seasons and everything, so being there when it's cold, I didn't mind it, and then in summer it was beautiful, and then you get the tail end of the season where it starts to cool off again, but the seafood's good there, man. I know you said you're not a seafood guy, but maybe if you would have tried the lobster, that would have changed your mind a little, but yeah. I respect it nonetheless.
Yeah.
So what is your best professional baseball story that you have, whether it's something that got lost in translation early on or some sort of success story? What is your best story that you have or memory from professional baseball so far?
Yeah, I think most of my stories usually come from interactions or failed interactions with some of the younger Latin guys that we got. Always lends itself to some funny stuff. We had a guy, younger pitcher, came up to AA earlier this year. Great arm, physically not all that well developed. Maybe a little not as lean as we'd like him to be, and lacking some posterior chain development. And one of the first days I had him in the weight room, we're doing some lower body stuff, and I was kind of messing around with him, joking, and told him that he didn't have a culo, no butt. This will be good for you. And he pulled down his shorts right there in the weight room and showed it to me to prove that he did have it, which...
Oh, man. I haven't been in that exact situation, but I've been in very similar.
But hey, all right, I guess you do have one there, guy. So that was a good one. Also, adventures in Spanish speaking. I took a lot of classroom Spanish in high school to the point that, when I was 18, 19 years old, felt like I was pretty good at it. But then living in South Dakota and Iowa and Maine for a couple of years, you lose a lot of it. So right now I remember enough to sometimes get myself in trouble and maybe a little more confident in it than I should be. I had a mix-up where, in Spanish you say, someone has miedo, that's fear, they're scared of something. Well, I was saying mierda, which... if the listeners at home, want to Google what that means, maybe not a family-friendly word to put on the podcast, but does not mean fear at all. And there were a couple guys I was asking if they were scared of something. They were getting some really funny looks when I was asking if they, had mierda, and come to find out from, one of our American guys who's bilingual that I was not even close, and, some funny translations. It made sense where I was getting some weird looks from guys when I was asking them, something that made no sense to them, but I was maybe a little bit too confident in the Spanish I was throwing out there.
Yeah, that's really outstanding stuff, honestly. Latin guys are so funny to be around, and Everybody seems to have had that one story where, they thought they knew a little Spanish and then they didn't, and the Latin guys are just like, what's this gringo trying to say to me? But
Yeah.
and even if you've learned it in school, like clubhouse Spanish is just so different than textbook Spanish.
Mm-hmm.
Good stories, though. I got a good laugh out of those ones. So,
Yeah.
What do you believe in within strength and conditioning that others think you are crazy for believing?
I'd say if there's people probably think I'm crazy because I'm not really buying in right now that there's any exercises out there that are really bad or dangerous or causing injury. If you had asked me, 2-3 years ago when I was coming up about something like, say, back squatting, I might have told you that, there's some risk to the shoulders and some concerns about lower back that, I'd rather have guys front squat, or some of these lifts are just too risky and, too likely to cause injury. And now, having been around, some places where, that's been a big part of the program, and also kind of just keeping up to date with, just current knowledge and research on pain science and injury and all that, I don't really think that there's any exercise out there that's going to be the sole purpose that someone's getting injured or someone's having pain. And I think that certainly there's no exercise that's going to be the one thing that's kind of the secret to success. And on the flip side, there's really nothing out there that's, I think, maybe a few exceptions, but there's really nothing out there that's going to be so dangerous that, oh my gosh, if a guy's barbell bench pressing, his shoulder is going to spontaneously implode. I think everything that goes into pain and injury and all that is so much more complicated, and to try to distill it down to these exercises are good, these exercises are bad or dangerous, I think that's a real slippery slope. And I think in some cases you run the risk of throwing out some really useful training tools that have withstood the test of time and have gotten really good results. And, using like a back squat as an example, I'm not going to say that that's, the end all be all that everyone needs to do it. But, if you do throw that out, you got to recognize that, hey, here are some things that it does well, and maybe you're not going to get those benefits if you're going to exclude it. And you start throwing one thing out, and that leads to another and another. And so that's kind of where I'm at right now, is that maybe we do some things that some programs might have kind of considered off limits. But if a guy's good at it and a guy's a believer in it, I'm definitely never going to plant the idea that something's dangerous for a guy. I'd never really want to kind of put in someone's head that something is going to hurt them or going to cause them pain, because I think there's a big psychological component to all that too, where if I'm kind of conditioning a guy mentally to think that something's going to be bad for him, he's probably more likely to have pain with it, with what we know about, the psychological and social aspects of pain. So people probably think I'm crazy for, maybe not completely contraindicating, some maybe barbell lifts, but I think everything's just so complicated that, I would never throw all those things out right now and, have guys do some of it.
Yeah, I think professional baseball kind of does that to you. I was the same way when I was younger. It was like, I only believe in these exercises. I don't believe in these exercises. And then the more you're around, especially older guys and guys that come from other organizations and different training philosophies, and you might have a free agent that's been back squatting for 10 years and you don't believe in back squatting. Well, something's got to give there. So just being able to, like you said, just know the benefits versus the risks, and be able to explain those and kind of float in the middle of, okay, if you do this, this might happen or this might happen, and if we don't, we need to exchange. I think that's very, very important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that how you frame everything is really important, and I never want to, like I said, kind of condition a guy to think that something's going to be bad for him. If anything, I want guys to feel like they're physically kind of resilient, and that every little ache and pain or, all these different exercises, I never want a guy to kind of live in fear that he's constantly on the edge of hurting himself if he does this, or if this is in the wrong position, this is going to happen, or, if he's feeling an ache this way, over here, that it means that he's got this condition. If anything, I want our guys to feel like they're resilient, and there's a lot of things that they can do, versus there's all these things that they should not be doing and that are scary and going to hurt them.
Yeah, what you say goes a long way. I'm trying to play with that with some guys here. It's like, I'm sore today. Like, every time you walk in the weight room, you just tell me you're sore. Like, what if tomorrow you come in and you tell me, hey, I feel good? And just see how the rest of your day goes. It's simple as that. Like, just framing things a little differently. Hey, I bet you feel good today, don't you? Versus, hey, how do
Hmm.
you feel today? Even something as
Yeah.
simple as that.
Yeah, it's like you're conditioning them to almost kind of feel the way that you might want them to feel. If a guy comes in and I say, "Hey man, like, are you sore here? Are you sore here?" They kind of start thinking, "Huh, well maybe I should be," and you can kind of start to, talk yourself into it and have that nocebo effect of feeling pain versus, "Hey man, like, you know, I bet you feel great today," or how's everything doing? Just kind of be how you frame things. I think goes a long way towards psychologically maybe conditioning guys to how they're feeling.
Yeah, for sure. I'm on board with that 100%, man.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. So, what do you think makes a strength and conditioning coach successful? Maybe just in general, and then more specifically in professional baseball.
I think in general, it's just having a programming and being able to coach lifts, whatever lifts are important to you, whether that's barbell lifts, single leg work, body weight, kettlebells, whatever it is. Having a plan in place to teach and progress that, and then knowing how to program it all so that you can get proven results, whether that's mobility, strength increases, speed increases. I think you got to have a program that you've shown to work and make guys better at the things that you're trying to improve, whatever that is. Like I said, barbells, kettlebells, body weight, whatever it is. I think you got to have a plan in place that you believe in and that you can show some results with.
Yeah, and how about specifically in professional baseball? Any tricks of the trade that the listeners might be able to take from you?
Yeah, I guess what I've gotten over the last 2 seasons is maybe the most important thing in pro ball isn't necessarily the programming or the X's and O's. It's all, socially. Can you get the guys to buy in, and can you get guys to do what they need to do? And also just kind of knowing how to manage 5 or 6 months with the same group of guys, seeing them all the time, and how you kind of handle just the social part of it. You're going to see the guys on the bus and in the hotel and in the clubhouse and on the field, and you got to be really good at kind of managing egos and personalities and learning how to, like I said, try to get guys better and get them to buy in, and also having the social awareness and the feel to, keep relationships good and be a good guy to work with. So I think just the social aspect has probably been the biggest eye opener over the last 2 years versus, just having the X and O's knowledge of how to write a program, how to coach a lift. It's all how you interact with guys, and you can have the best program in the world, but if you're not a guy who's going to be in the clubhouse that guys like to be around or can work well with guys for 5 months in a row without them getting sick of hearing your voice, that's probably more important than anything else.
Yeah, really, really small percentage of your conversations with players are actually strength and conditioning or lifting or mobility. A lot of the times it's in the dugout just chatting with them, or in the clubhouse when there's a down moment, or like you said, on the buses or the planes or whatever. There's so much more interaction outside of just that strength and conditioning piece that if you can't be a normal person and have real conversations, they'll shy away from you immediately.
Definitely.
So do you have any advice for others in the field, maybe young coaches looking to get in, or even older coaches that have been around a while? Just any advice that you have?
Yeah, I think for young coaches, and maybe a mistake that I made early on, there's more information out there on training, especially as it pertains to baseball, that's more available than ever was before, especially on social media. There's just tons of content out there that's really easy to find, and I think you got to be careful as a young coach to continue to try things yourself. And say for example, you've got a guy on social media saying that he doesn't like cleans, and cleans are, he does use them because they're not worth the risk in his opinion, and all that. He's certainly entitled, to that opinion as an experienced guy putting out content. But as a young coach, if you look at something like that and, well, maybe cleans are a waste of time and I'm not going to learn how to do them myself, I'm not going to learn how to teach them and progress them and how to program them, I think you're leaving some pretty large gaps in your coaching arsenal if you skip those things. And maybe you do try them yourself or try them with athletes or whatnot, and you come around and realize that, okay, maybe I like this other training modality better. But if you've never gone through the process of, say, learning it, coaching it, programming it, all that, I think you're missing out on a pretty good developmental chunk. And you also, I think, need to kind of make your own decisions versus just listening to what everyone's putting out there on social media or in blog posts, and just, like I said, kind of earlier, it's a slippery slope of you start writing off a lot of things, and next thing you know, there's all these training tools that you've never learned how to use because you've just taken people's word for it that they're not going to be useful for you. and now you've got a lot of gaps in your knowledge base. So even if you don't end up using something, I think there's still a lot of value to learning about it, trying it, and then if it's not for you, it's not for you, but who knows, it might be something that you actually see some really good results with that maybe went against what the guy on Instagram is posting about it. So don't just take people's word for everything. Obviously there's a lot to take from everyone, but keep kind of a healthy amount of skepticism, and try some stuff, make some mistakes, and maybe you'll come to realize that either those people were right, or maybe there's some stuff that they missed.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that we are like our own guinea pigs, and we should be experimenting with stuff on ourselves, regardless of if we're going to use it or not. Because like we said, if a guy comes from another organization and he used to clean, and you've never done a clean before, and he wants to progress with those, you're useless to him. You can't coach him up at all. And then the other thing with that is there are a lot of opinions on social media, and a lot of those people do not have experience per se in the clubhouse and the travel and just the actual ins and outs of professional baseball. And things are different here than in the social media world, or in the private setting, or even the college setting, or whatever. It's all different. So if you write it off because one person said it doesn't work in their setting, well, it might still work in your setting. You don't know.
Yeah, 100%.
So what about continuing ed for you? Where are you going to continue your education? Are you reading books? Are you listening to podcasts? Are you attending seminars? Where are you going to keep the sword sharp?
Yeah, I think kind of day to day, especially during the season when we're traveling, I get a lot of stuff through social media, whether that's on Twitter. If you kind of see the same article or post getting retweeted or liked by a lot of different coaches that you follow, it's probably something you should take a look at. So I really like Twitter, kind of a way as kind of screening out all the stuff that's out there, and it's almost like people are recommending it to you on a daily basis, if they're retweeting and putting it out there. So I think that's a really good starting point. In terms of books, most of the books I'm reading right now are kind of less training related and more either just baseball in general related or for enjoyment. I just got the new MVP Machine book, which is just about player development in general. So it's kind of work related, but also, it's not a strictly weight room strength conditioning book. But probably, the books that have helped me the most that I still kind of carry around with me is actually Starting Strength and Practical Programming by Mark Ripito. It's a guy who I think most people in baseball, maybe don't take a lot from, or kind of guy that gets overlooked. But I think you'd be hard pressed to find a better book just kind of on general training, the response to training, managing volumes and intensities, teaching lifts. I think it's a really overlooked resource that most people in sports performance are kind of overlooked, but I highly encourage people to check out Starting Strength and Practical Programming, just kind of as a general resource of maybe some stuff that is very basic that you've overlooked, as you've gotten further along. That it's a good kind of thing to bring you back to, what actually matters, what are the really basics of training and the responses to training. Yeah,
and even if you have read Practical Programming, Starting Strength, like you can definitely go back to those and still pick things out every time you open them up. And I saw MVP Machine of all places on Twitter, speak of the devil, this morning.
Yeah.
And I was like, you know what? This looks like it's right up my alley. I need to go get it. So we have an off day today. I was actually planning on going bookstore later today, picking it up. So it's funny that you bring that one up.
Yeah.
I want to do a lightning round with you. I know you got in late and you need a little rest, but if you got time for me, I'd like to do a lightning round.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, first question. Who is your biggest influence in the field of strength and conditioning?
I think with this, I got to kind of throw a lot of people out there. Starting off, my first college experience after, graduating from undergrad was at Northwestern University. So the whole staff there, Mike Schweigert, Jason Polera, Joe Nudo, were the full-time coaches there that kind of took me as a guy who didn't have a strength coach as a Division III baseball player. We didn't have anyone, at our school to do that. And, the kind of people that really showed me what the profession was all about and what a strength coach was all about. So I definitely owe them a lot, getting me started in my career. And then after that, I was at South Dakota State, where I was a graduate assistant and director there. Coach Nate Moe has been a huge influence on me, taking a guy who maybe thought he knew more than he actually did. And then, consistently being a great example on how he trains his teams, how he manages his department, and how he's kind of a mentor for the younger coaches that he gets on staff there. I really owe Coach Mo a lot, as professionally, and then also kind of my personal development. And then right now with the Braves, our coordinator, Mike Schofield, is a huge resource to me kind of daily, as a guy who's, especially last year, was still kind of transitioning to some of the professional baseball, lifestyle aspects. Mike's a huge resource for me every day that, when I got some stuff going on or I'm not sure what to do here, he's always just a phone call away, to help me out. And then our big league strength coach here at the Braves, Brad Scott, is another guy that I lean on a lot, who spent a lot of time working in college before he came to the pro ball side of things. So I've taken a lot from Brad and how he's, transitioned from being in college to, working in the big leagues now, and all the things that go along with that transition. So I really owe all those people a lot, and, they're all real big influences on me.
Right on, man. One piece of equipment to train with, what would you choose?
Barbell. I think there's just too many things you can do with it. You can lift it fast, you can lift it a lot to get bigger, you can lift it heavy. It's incrementally loadable. If you got, the right size plates, you can make it weigh whatever you need between 45 and 1,000 pounds to fit your goal. And I just think that versatility and all the things you can do with it are tough to get from really anything else, if you can only pick one thing.
Same page.
Nice.
Biggest accomplishment professionally and or personally?
I think professionally, probably the most satisfying thing that I've done was actually when I was at Maine. In that department there, kind of a smaller Division I school. I had a ton of athletes that I was responsible for, and in the case of Maine, was kind of the first full-time coach that was working with those teams. So it was a huge kind of amount of hours that I was spending there, and tons of teaching, and very frustrating at times. But at the end of a semester there, to kind of see progress that had been made and kind of establishing it from the ground level there at Maine was just really cool, really rewarding to see, and still keep in touch with a lot of the the student athletes there who are still there, who have graduated. Even though it wasn't the biggest school that I've been at, it was really rewarding just kind of starting something from the ground up, and seeing all of that time that we put in the weight room starting to pay off for them, and seeing how they've been able to kind of progress even since I've been gone.
Last one, any career other than strength and conditioning, what would you choose?
I think the easy one would probably be coaching baseball. I coached high school ball when I was still playing in undergrad, and then that was my first job after graduation. But that's probably a little too close to strength coaching, so I'd say probably country music singer.
So that kind of leads me into the next one. I know you play guitar. How long have you been playing guitar? I know I said that was the last question, but I got one more now.
Yeah, I started when I was 19, so it's been about 8 years or so now. I don't play as much as I'd like during the season. Sometimes if we're staying at a place reasonably close to a guitar center, I'll hop in an Uber there, and if I got a couple hours in the afternoon, I'll kill time there. But yeah, I've been about 8 years now.
Awesome, man. That's cool. Well, if the listeners want to get in touch with you, where can we get more? Are you social media based? Is there a better place? Where are we going to get in touch with you? Yeah,
my Instagram and Twitter are both Coach J Sidwell. Twitter, I don't post so much anymore, kind of more just retweet and like some stuff. But that's probably where I had more of the work-related professional stuff. If you go on my Instagram, it's just videos of me lifting weights and playing guitar and pictures of my dog. Really nothing professional on there.
Hey, those are the three best things. I mean, if you're married, that one is included too, but the others are pretty important. So
yeah, I don't expect to take much work-related from my Instagram unless you like guitars and sumo deadlifts.
I mean, what could be better? Well, I appreciate you coming on, man, and we'll talk to you soon.
All right, thanks for having me, Chris.
All right, everybody, that concludes this episode with Jordan. I hope you enjoyed the conversation that we had. 3 things that I took from Jordan in this episode: be social to create buy-in, no exercise is inherently bad or dangerous, and try things yourself. With that being said, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll talk to you again on the next one.